These golfers spent decades earning trophies, sponsors, and exemptions, then treated all of it like a mid-handicapper treats a sleeve of Pro V1's near water. 45 minutes of God-given talent and absolutely no common sense. Pour yourself something strong. You're going to need it. It was 1994, late in the tournament, and CBS commentator Gary McCord was watching a putt glide across the 17th green like it had somewhere important to be. Rather than reach for the standard vocabulary, McCord looked at those impossibly slick surfaces and suggested Augusta didn't mow its greens so much as bikini wax them. He also described a hazardous area behind one of the greens as having body bags. The CBS Sports president sitting next to him laughed. McCord figured he was fine. He was not fine. A letter arrived from two-time Masters champion Tom Watson calling McCord the Howard Stern of golf and demanding his removal. Augusta agreed. The ban came through that August. CBS, deeply interested in keeping its broadcast rights, did not exactly charge to his defense. McCord later said the whole episode made him more famous than anything he'd ever done on a golf course, which is almost certainly true and not even slightly comforting. He never called another Masters, not one. Clayton Baker flew his private jet into Augusta for the 2012 final round, watched Bubba Watson win his first green jacket, and then, as the crowd cleared the 10th hole, made a decision that would haunt him for years. He ducked under the gallery ropes, walked across the fairway, and scooped some of Augusta's famous bright white sand into a beer cup. He collected soil from sporting venues. It was a hobby. He figured a little sand from Augusta National would make a nice addition. 3 security guards materialized immediately. The cup was knocked from his hand. He was taken to the ground, handcuffed, loaded onto a golf cart, and transferred to Richmond County Sheriff's deputies. His private jet sat on the tarmac, waiting while Baker sat in a cell. Charges were eventually dropped, but the legal fees came to roughly $20,000, and he said the experience left him seriously depressed for weeks. The friend who'd gotten him the ticket was banned for life from purchasing Masters badges, all for a cup of sand. Augusta does not do souvenirs. The 2021 Masters Honorary Starters ceremony was already one of the most emotionally significant in the tournament's history. Tiger Woods was 21 years old and in the middle of dismantling Augusta National by 12 strokes, the most dominant Masters victory in history. He was about to become the first African-American golfer to win a major championship. And while the world was witnessing history, Fuzzy Zoeller was standing under the oak tree by the clubhouse with a drink in his hand, talking to a CNN camera crew. He called Woods that little boy, and then said, "Tell him not to serve fried chicken next year, or collard greens, or whatever the hell they serve." He snapped his fingers, smiled, and walked away like he had just told a joke at a cocktail party. The clip aired on CNN's Pro Golf Weekly and detonated like a grenade. Zoeller lost his Kmart sponsorship deal overnight. He later said it was the worst thing he had ever gone through in his life. He apologized. He cried about it publicly for years. But the words never went away. He carried them to his grave in 2025. The 1999 Ryder Cup at the Country Club in Brookline. Massachusetts is still referred to as the ugliest day in modern golf. The Americans trailed 10-6 going into Sunday singles. No team had ever come back from 4 points down. Then they won the first 6 matches of the day. The atmosphere was already a pressure cooker when Justin Leonard, who had been 4 down against Jose Maria Olazabal with 7 holes to play, rolled in a 45-foot birdie putt on the 17th green to clinch the cup. What happened next was chaos. The entire American team, their wives, caddies, and NBC cameramen stormed the putting surface in a frenzy of hugging and screaming. There was just one problem. Olazabal still had a 22-foot putt to have the hole. He was standing there watching people trample his putting line. Europe's vice-captain Sam Torrance called it the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Olazabal missed. He later said it was an ugly picture to see. Ben Crenshaw apologized on behalf of the team, but the damage was done. Brookline became a scar on the Ryder Cup that took years to heal. Rory Sabatini played fast. Ben Crane played like he was reading a novel between shots. They were paired together for all 4 rounds at the 2005 Booz Allen Classic, which is the golf equivalent of being locked in a car for 16 hours with someone who chews with their mouth open. By Sunday, Sabatini had reached his limit. On the 17th hole, after their group had been put on the clock, Sabatini chipped onto the green, putted out, and walked straight to the 18th tee. He left Crane standing alone in the fairway, still lining up his approach shot. Paul Azinger, calling the action for ABC, did not hold back. "That's the rudest thing I've ever seen on a golf course," he said. "He's gone psycho." The crowd booed Sabatini as he walked to the 18th green. The next week at the US Open, Sabatini issued a public apology. But when he walked onto the practice range at Pinehurst, something unexpected happened. The players and caddies already out there started clapping for him. Turns out, most of the tour felt the same way about slow play. They just never had the nerve to do anything about it. Before we continue, I wanted to tell you something real quick. My dad, who's the person that got me into golf and professional golf overall, bet me I'd never hit 1,000 subscribers. He thinks I'm wasting my time. So if you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button and help me prove the old man wrong. Let's settle this bet once and for all. Let's continue. Greg Norman walked onto Augusta's first tee on Sunday with a 6-stroke lead, the largest 54-hole advantage in Masters history. This wasn't supposed to be a contest. This was supposed to be a victory lap with grass stains. He shot 78. Nick Faldo shot 67. Norman lost by 5 strokes, an 11-shot swing in 18 holes. Read that again. He found the water at 12, chunked his approach at 16. The Augusta patrons sat in silence as the greatest frontrunner in golf history unraveled shot by shot, each one worse than the last. There was no single catastrophic moment, just a slow, methodical disintegration, like watching a sandcastle lose to the tide. Except the sandcastle was a Hall of Famer, and the tide was Nick Faldo playing the round of his life. On the 18th green, Faldo hugged him. It became one of the most iconic images in golf, the winner comforting the man he just buried. Norman held 331 weeks at world number 1. He never won the Masters, never won another major, and one Sunday at Augusta stamped the word choker onto a Hall of Fame career. The decision wasn't one bad shot. It was the decision to keep attacking when the tournament was already his. Jean van de Velde stood on the 72nd tee at Carnoustie, needing a double bogey to win the Open Championship. A double bogey. You could close your eyes, swing with one hand, and probably still make double bogey. That's how big the cushion was. He hit driver. Nobody on earth understands why. The ball bounced off a grandstand into thick rough. His second clipped the rail of the Barry Burn Bridge and ricocheted into deeper rough. His third went into the water. And then came the image that defined his entire existence. Van de Velde rolling up his trousers and wading into the burn like a man who lost his keys at the beach. Except the keys were a major championship. He took the drop, got up and down for a triple bogey 7. Lost in the playoff. He went from needing a 6 to win a major to becoming the most famous collapse in golf history. He never contended in a major again. And that image of him standing in the burn, trousers rolled up, water around his knees, became the only thing anyone remembers about his career. Ian Poulter and Graham McDowell are Ryder Cup warriors, LIV teammates, and, for one brief, ill-advised stretch, the two men who treated Augusta National like a behind-the-scenes vlog. During a practice round, the pair pulled out their phones and started filming. Not just the course, the clubhouse, the locker room. The kind of footage Augusta has spent decades making absolutely certain the public never lays eyes on. It went up on social media. It did not stay up for long. Poulter, apparently not fully absorbing the lesson, pushed the envelope again years later with a selfie that tested the same invisible line. No formal punishment was ever announced, at least not publicly. Which at Augusta means one of two things. Either nothing happened, or something happened, and you'll never hear about it. Given the club's track record, the smart money is on the latter. Augusta doesn't always tell you when it's watching, it just watches. In 2013, a 14-year-old Chinese amateur named Tianlang Guan became the youngest player in Masters history to make the cut. He was composed, he was talented, and he was, by the assessment of European Tour chief referee John Paramore, slightly too slow. On Friday, approaching the 17th green, Paramore stepped in and handed Guan a one-stroke slow play penalty, making him the youngest player in Masters history to receive that particular distinction as well. To his enormous credit, Guan took the ruling with more grace than most grown professionals manage in similar situations, nodded and kept going. He still made the weekend. The moment said less about Guan's character and more about Augusta's clock. The Masters has no interest in waiting for anyone, regardless of age, occasion, or the historic nature of your presence. You can be the most remarkable story at the tournament. The fairways will still move at Augusta's pace, not yours. It was 1966, a Monday playoff on the 18th hole, and the gallery was surging down the fairway the way galleries do when something genuinely electric is happening. CBS commentator Jack Whitaker, one of the most respected voices in the sport, looked at the scene in front of him and called it exactly what it looked like: a mob. He moved on. 6 months later, he found out he was off the Masters broadcast. Clifford Roberts had decided, quietly, firmly, finally, that the crowd at Augusta National was not a mob. They were patrons. One word. One word that cost Whitaker 6 years on the biggest broadcast in golf. He eventually returned in 1972 and went on to have a distinguished career. But the lesson was already written into Augusta's unofficial rulebook in permanent ink. The gallery is always a gallery. The patrons are always patrons, and the words you choose inside those ropes matter more than you think, even when you're just describing what you see. Phil Mickelson stood on the 72nd hole at Winged Foot with a one-shot lead. He needed a par to win, a bogey for a playoff, the one major he'd never won, the only thing between him and the Grand Slam, and all he had to do was hit the fairway. Johnny Miller said it on air before the swing. "This better be a 4-wood." Phil pulled driver on the last hole of a US Open with a one-shot lead, like a man defusing a bomb who decides to use a chainsaw. The ball sailed so far left it bounced off a hospitality tent and landed behind trees. His recovery shot hit a tree trunk and advanced exactly 25 yards. His approach plugged in a greenside bunker. Double bogey. Tournament gone. Just like that. Afterward, he stood in front of the cameras and said 5 words that will follow him forever. "I am such an idiot. He never won a US Open. 6 runner-up finishes, more than any golfer in history. The greatest player to never complete the Grand Slam, and he knows exactly which club cost him. John Daly won the PGA Championship at 25, won the British Open in 95, had more raw talent in his hands than most players could dream of, and then he fed every last dollar of it into a slot machine. Not metaphorically, actually literally into a slot machine. Between 1991 and 2007, Daly lost somewhere between $55 and $57 million gambling. Let that number breathe for a second. He played 7 simultaneous hands of blackjack at up to $15,000 per hand. After finishing runner-up at the 2005 WGC American Express Championship, a playoff loss to Tiger that earned him $750,000, he drove straight to the win in Las Vegas and lost $1.65 million in 5 hours. On slots, not even blackjack, slots. His entire PGA Tour career earnings? Just over $10 million, not even close to covering that tab. When asked about it, Daly said he should probably say he regrets it, but he did it and had a lot of fun doing it. $55 million of fun. The man treated ATMs like confetti machines. After 12 years carrying Tiger's bag through 13 major victories, Steve Williams was fired in 2011. He moved to Adam Scott's bag and immediately won the Bridgestone Invitational. In a post-round interview, Williams said it was the best win of my life. That was a shot at Tiger. But it was nothing compared to what came next. At the annual Caddies Awards dinner in Shanghai, Williams received a joke award for Celebration of the Year. When he got up to accept it, he told the room his aim had been to shove it right up that black expletive. The room went silent. Players turned to each other with widened eyes. The comment was supposed to stay off the record. It did not. Williams apologized the next day, claiming the spirit was meant to be fun. Tiger's agent said Woods was shocked and disappointed. The golf world called it what it was: inexcusable. This was not even Williams' first offense. 3 years earlier, at a charity event in New Zealand, he told the crowd, "I wouldn't call Mickelson a great player because I hate the prick." The quote bounced from a local New Zealand newspaper to The Guardian in London to the Associated Press in New York within 48 hours. Mickelson responded with a statement dripping in class. After seeing Steve Williams' comments, all I could think of was how lucky I am to have a class act like Bones on my bag. Tiger made Williams apologize, but the pattern was already set. Williams had a habit of throwing grenades and then acting surprised when they went off. In the Saturday four balls at the 2015 Solheim Cup, 20-year-old American rookie Allison Lee missed a birdie putt on the 17th hole, and her ball stopped 18 inches from the cup. Lee scooped it up, assuming the putt had been conceded. Charlie Hull was already walking toward the next tee, but Suzanne Pettersen said the putt had not been conceded. Referees upheld her claim. Europe was awarded the hole. Both Lee and Hull were reduced to tears on the green. U.S. Captain Julie Inkster was livid. "I have never seen anything like it in my career," she said. "It's just not right. You just don't do that to your peers. It's disrespectful." Dame Laura Davies, working as a TV pundit and a European legend, said she was disgusted by her former teammate. Pettersen apologized the next day, but karma had already made other plans. The Americans, fueled by outrage, mounted a historic comeback and won the cup 14.5 to 13.5. Pettersen later admitted that if Europe had won by that half point, the fallout would have been catastrophic. In 1999, David Duval shot 59 in the final round of the Bob Hope Classic, just the third player in history to break 60 on the PGA Tour. He was world number 1, 13 wins in 4 years. The 2001 Open Championship trophy on his shelf. Then vertigo hit. Back problems, wrist surgery, personal turmoil, everything at once. His world ranking fell to 1,532nd. Let that sink in, 1,532nd. Over 2 full seasons, he made just 4 of 18 cuts, earning barely $100,000. The best golfer on the planet became a man who couldn't make the weekend. The cruelest part is there was no single catastrophic decision. No driver off the tee, no casino trip, no scandal. It was the quiet decision to keep tinkering with his swing, chasing what he'd lost instead of adapting to what he still had. Sometimes the dumbest decision isn't dramatic. It's just refusing to let go. Phil Mickelson won the 2021 PGA Championship at 50 years old, the oldest major champion in history. His legacy had never been higher. America's folk hero, the people's champion. All of it earned over 3 decades of fist pumps and impossible flop shots. Then he took a blowtorch to it, and not a small one. Government auditors uncovered $40 million in gambling losses between 2010 and 2014. Because apparently, one Phil Mickelson gambling story in this video wasn't enough. The debt contributed to his split with caddy Bones Mackay, who was owed hundreds of thousands in back pay. Desperate and leveraged, Mickelson helped recruit players for LIV Golf. Then came the comments to biographer Alan Shipnuck. He called the Saudis scary, acknowledged they'd killed a journalist and executed people for being gay, but said it was worth it for leverage. Every major sponsor dropped him. He disappeared for 4 months. He eventually signed with Livy for a reported $200 million and admitted his gambling was an addiction. From the oldest major champion in history to golf's most cautionary tale, it didn't take a bad swing. It took a man who couldn't stop gambling, couldn't stop talking, and couldn't see that the legacy was worth more than any of it. Every player on this list had the talent to be remembered as one of the greatest, and everyone made a decision that changed how the story ends. Lee Elder, the man who broke the Masters color barrier in 1975, was being formally recognized for the first time, standing alongside Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player on the first tee. Augusta chairman Fred Ridley was speaking. Cameras were locked on the moment, and standing directly behind Elder the entire time was Wayne Player, Gary's son, serving as his father's ceremonial caddy, with a branded sleeve of golf balls deliberately angled toward every camera in the building. Nicklaus reportedly pulled Wayne aside and asked him what on earth he was thinking. Wayne's own brother Mark went on social media and said Wayne had been correctly banned, calling it a shame and an embarrassment. Wayne later said he had zero intent, and that 40 of the 50 texts he received called him a marketing genius. The other 10, he acknowledged, were less flattering. He hasn't been back since. Augusta accepted his written apology and replied, "Thanks, but no." Roberto De Vincenzo was celebrating his 45th birthday at Augusta in 1968 when he played one of the finest final rounds of his life. He made birdie on the 17th to pull level with Bob Golby, bogeyed the 18th, and sat down certain he was heading for a playoff. What he didn't notice, and what playing partner Tommy Aaron had accidentally marked wrong, was that his scorecard recorded a par on 17 instead of the birdie he'd actually made. De Vincenzo signed it. Under the rules of golf, the higher score had to stand. One signed number on one piece of paper cost him a place in the playoff, and Golby was crowned champion without hitting another shot. Aaron, who discovered the mistake himself moments later, was devastated. De Vincenzo handled the whole thing with a dignity that frankly the situation didn't deserve, summing it up in 5 words that golf has never forgotten. "What a stupid I am." He went on to estimate he'd earned $250,000 in appearance fees over the years, specifically because of that moment. Small consolation, still a green jacket short. Robert McIntyre arrived at the 2026 Masters as one of the favorites, ranked 8th in the world, fresh off a run of top 5 finishes. He left having been reprimanded by Augusta officials, having missed the cut by 3 shots, and having posted an AI-generated meme on Instagram of himself doing the thing he got reprimanded for. The incident in question unfolded on the par 5 15th hole in the first round, where McIntyre sent his approach into the water, took a penalty drop, sent the next one into the water as well, blasted the one after that over the green, and ultimately made a quadruple bogey 9. Somewhere in that sequence, he raised his middle finger at the 15th green on national television. He also slammed his club into the fairway on the 14th and 17th, and was heard swearing on the 12th and 13th. Augusta officials reprimanded him after the round. He declined to speak to the media. Then posted the meme, which, depending on your perspective, is either the correct response to a terrible week or the absolute last thing you do at Augusta National. Patrick Reed was leading the Hero World Challenge when his drive on the 11th hole found a waste bunker. What happened next was caught in high definition by a Golf Channel camera and replayed approximately 10 million times. Reed took 2 practice swings that clearly flattened the sand behind his ball, improving his lie. He was hit with a 2-stroke penalty. His explanation afterward was a masterpiece of deflection. He said his club was that far behind the ball and that he didn't feel it drag. Brooks Koepka was asked if Reed had cheated. His response was surgical. "Yeah, I think yeah. I don't know what he was doing, building sandcastles in the sand." You know where your club is. At the President's Cup the following week, Australian fans greeted Reid on the first tee as the Excavator. Even his own teammate Justin Thomas mocked him by taking exaggerated practice swings in a bunker during their practice round. Reid has never lived it down. He probably never will. Before Vijay Singh became a world number one and a Hall of Famer, he was accused of altering his scorecard to make the cut at the 1985 Indonesian Open. He was disqualified and suspended from the Asian Tour. Singh has always attributed it to an error by his playing partner, but players who were there told a different story. An American player present at the event later told Sports Illustrated, "It was not a misunderstanding. All of us who were around are very upset that Vijay denies this." Singh has never fully addressed the incident publicly. It remains a shadow over an otherwise brilliant career. When Annika Sorenstam, the most dominant player in women's golf, was invited to play in the PGA Tour's Colonial Tournament, it should have been a celebration. Instead, Vijay Singh turned it into a circus. He publicly said he would withdraw if paired with her, and that he hoped she would miss the cut. The comments were widely condemned as sexist and dismissive. Sorenstam handled it with more grace than Singh deserved. She missed the cut by 4 strokes, but earned the respect of nearly everyone who watched her compete. Singh earned something else entirely. Before a single ball was struck at Brookline, Payne Stewart set the tone by suggesting that the European players were only good enough to serve as caddies for the American team. The comment was intended as competitive bravado. It landed as arrogance. Europe used it as fuel. And while Stewart showed tremendous sportsmanship on the final day by conceding Colin Montgomery's putt on the 18th in a beautiful gesture, the earlier comment hung over the event like a cloud. Stewart died in a plane crash just 1 month later, and the comment has been treated with sensitivity ever since. But it happened, and it mattered. November 27th, 2009. 2:30 in the morning, Tiger Woods drove his Escalade into a fire hydrant and a tree, yards from his Florida home. His wife smashed the rear window with a golf club, and somehow that was the least dramatic part of the next 6 months. What followed was the most spectacular unraveling in sports history. Affairs coming out like clowns from a circus car, over a dozen of them. Gillette, Accenture, AT&T, sponsors didn't just leave, they sprinted. A stint in a Mississippi rehab clinic, a press conference where he stood behind a podium and told the world, "I was unfaithful, I had affairs, I cheated." He'd held the world #1 ranking for 281 consecutive weeks. Gone, winless for 2 full years. 4 back surgeries followed. A DUI arrest in 2017 produced one of the most infamous mugshots in sports history. At 33, he had 14 majors and looked certain to break Nicklaus's record of 18. He's 50 now. He has 15. The question was never whether he'd pass Nicklaus. It was by how many. One night in a driveway answered that permanently. In 1991, Ian Baker Finch won the British Open at Royal Birkdale with a closing 66, hitting every fairway and every green. World top 10, career at its absolute peak. Then he decided he needed more distance. He did not need more distance. The man just hit every fairway at a British Open. But he started tinkering anyway, like a chef who wins a Michelin star and decides to rebuild the kitchen. Between 1995 and 1996, he missed the cut, withdrew, or was disqualified in all 29 PGA Tour events he entered. Every single one. At the 1995 Open at St. Andrews, playing alongside Arnold Palmer in Arnie's farewell appearance, he snap-hooked his opening tee shot so far left, it cleared 2 fairways and sailed out of bounds off the 18th hole. 170 yards dead left. 2 entire fairways. Caddies said they'd never seen anyone do that, which is not the kind of record you want at St. Andrews. At the 1997 Open at Royal Troon, he shot 92, the worst score by a past champion in modern history. He cried in the locker room, walked into the champions room, collapsed on the floor with his wife, and stayed there for 45 minutes. He retired from competitive golf that day. Players called it the full-body yips. A British Open champion, destroyed by the decision to fix a swing that was never broken. Rory McIlroy was 21, held a 4-shot lead heading into the final round at Augusta, and the entire sport was ready to hand him a green jacket and a coronation. The script was written. Nobody told Augusta. Then the back nine happened. His tee shot on 10 went so far left it ended up between the cabins. Not on another fairway. Between the cabins. Triple bogey. He 3-putted 11, found the water at 12 for double. In 3 holes, a 4-shot lead became a 4-shot deficit. He shot 80. Charles Schwartzel won. McIlroy walked off 18 with red eyes and a trembling lip, and every camera on the property was aimed directly at his face. Here's the thing though. 2 months later, he won the US Open by 8 shots, which means Augusta didn't break him. It just reminded him, in the cruelest way imaginable, that it could. Jordan Spieth was the defending champion. He led by 5 through 9 holes on Sunday. He was about to become only the 4th golfer ever to win back-to-back Masters. Then the par 3 12th happened. 155 yards of Rays Creek, the hole that has been personally victimizing golfers since 1934. His tee shot found the water. He took a drop. His next shot found the water again. Same water, same hole. Quadruple bogey 7. A 5-shot lead became a 1-shot deficit in a single hole. Danny Willett won. Spieth hasn't won a major since the 2017 Open. He's spoken openly about the mental toll, about how that one hole lives in his head. 155 yards, 2 splashes, and a career that was supposed to be generational has spent every year since chasing the ghost of that hole. Tiger Woods was in contention during the 2nd round of the 2013 Masters when his wedge on the par 5 15th hit the flagstick and ricocheted into the pond. Standard bad luck. What happened next was less standard. Instead of dropping at the designated drop zone, Tiger went back to his original position and then deliberately dropped 2 yards further back, a spot he chose specifically to take spin off the shot. He later explained this on camera in detail to reporters. He signed his scorecard. He should have been disqualified for playing from the wrong spot and signing an incorrect card. Augusta National, facing the prospect of bouncing the most famous golfer on the planet from its own tournament, reached into its rulebook and found a creative interpretation that allowed them to assess a 2-stroke penalty instead. The golf world was not universally impressed. The question, would they have done the same for anyone else, has never been satisfactorily answered. The tournament committee said it was the right call. Some pundits thought it was the convenient one. Rory McIlroy walked to the first tee on Sunday at the 2011 Masters at 21 years old, 4 shots clear of the field, looking for all the world like a man who was about to win his first major championship. He was composed, he was talented, he was almost certainly going to be fine. He was not fine. A hook tee shot on the 10th rattled off a tree and ended up between 2 cabins on the Augusta property. By the time he walked off the 12th green, he had made triple bogey, double bogey, and double bogey in succession and was no longer leading the Masters in any meaningful sense. He shot an 80, one of the highest final rounds ever carded by a 54-hole leader in major championship history. He finished tied for 15th. In a BBC interview 4 years later, McIlroy called it the most important day of his career. The collapse, he said, taught him more than any win ever could, which is the kind of thing you can afford to say once you've won 4 majors. In the moment, it was just a very long walk home. Ernie Els is a World Golf Hall of Famer. He has 4 major championships. He has more than 60 professional wins worldwide. He is nicknamed the Big Easy, a nod to the effortless grace with which he has always moved around a golf course. And in the first round of the 2016 Masters, he 6-putted the first green from inside 2 feet, carding a 9 on the par 4 opener, the worst score on that hole in Masters history. The first putt lipped out. So did the second. By the fourth, he was batting at it with one hand in visible disbelief. The Masters shot tracking system, which had never been asked to process that many strokes on a single hole, briefly crashed. Playing partner Jason Day later said it was the first time he'd ever seen anything like it and worried it might be career-ending. Els finished the day at 8 over. "I can't get the putter to go back," he told reporters. "When snakes are going off in your brain, it's difficult." Nobody in the building disagreed with him. The 1990 PGA Championship was held at Shoal Creek in Birmingham, Alabama. In the weeks leading up to the event, the club's founder, Hall Thompson, told reporters that the club would not be pressured into accepting black members. His exact words were chilling. "We have the right to associate or not to associate with whomever we choose. The country club is our home, and we pick and choose who we want." IBM pulled their sponsorship. Civil rights groups organized protests. The PGA was forced to adopt a policy requiring host clubs to have non-discriminatory membership practices. Shoal Creek eventually admitted its first African-American member before the tournament began. But the fact that it took a public firestorm in 1990 to make that happen tells you everything you need to know about how slowly golf moved on race. The atmosphere at Brookline was already toxic before David Duval poured gasoline on it. After crushing Jesper Parnevik 5-4 in Sunday singles, Duval ran around the green cupping his hand to his ear, demanding louder cheers from the gallery like a wrestler playing to the crowd. It was not sportsmanship. It was performance art designed to humiliate the opposition. European players watching from the clubhouse were appalled. The American fans, already unruly enough to drive Colin Montgomery's father off the course, did not need encouragement. Duval gave it to them anyway. This one is less disrespect and more absurdity, but it belongs on the list because of the sheer audacity of the situation. The world #1 golfer was driving into Valhalla Golf Club for his second round tee time when Louisville police, dealing with a fatal accident near the entrance, stopped him. According to officers, Scheffler tried to drive around the traffic. He was pulled from his car, handcuffed, charged with second-degree assault of a police officer, and taken to the station. He was booked, released, arrived at the course, and shot a 66. He finished the tournament tied for 8th. All charges were eventually dropped. The mugshot of the best golfer on the planet in an orange jumpsuit became one of the most surreal images in sports history. Scheffler handled it with the calm of a man who genuinely could not understand what the fuss was about. Jordan Spieth stood on the 12th tee at the 2016 Masters with a 5-shot lead, 9 holes to play, and a very reasonable claim on his second consecutive green jacket. 30 minutes later, he was standing in 3rd place, and the tournament was effectively over. His tee shot on the par 3 12th fell into Rays Creek. He took a drop, chunked his wedge, and put that one in the water too. After a 3rd drop, he blasted his approach over the green into the bunker. He got up and down for a quadruple bogey 7, a 5-shot swing in one hole, a 5-shot lead erased in one sequence. Spieth became the first player in Masters history to lose a lead of that size heading into the back 9 on Sunday. He later said it was a pain that lasted a lifetime, replaying the 12th in his head long after everyone else had moved on. He rebounded with birdies on 13 and 15, which showed the kind of character that defines his career. It was also, by that point, nowhere near enough. Greg Norman arrived at the final round of the 1996 Masters with a 6-shot lead and a resume that said he was ready for this. He was the world's best player. He had been for years. He shot a first-round 63 to open the week, a Masters record at the time. And he was 6 clear of Nick Faldo, a man who had everything under control for exactly as long as Norman did not. Norman made bogey on the first hole, and then everything came apart with a thoroughness that professional sport rarely produces. He made 4 bogeys and 5 double bogeys. He shot 78. Faldo shot 67, the low round of the entire weekend in difficult conditions, and won by 5. Norman finished having turned a 6-shot advantage into a 5-shot deficit, an 11-shot swing against one opponent in one round. Afterward, Faldo embraced him on the 18th green and said he didn't know what to say. Norman told the press he played like a bunch of something unprintable. He never won the Masters. It remains the most famous collapse in the tournament's history and quite possibly all of professional golf. Phil Mickelson was always golf's lovable rogue. The thumbs up, the backward hat, the flop shots. Then Billy Walters, a professional gambler, published a book in 2023 claiming that Mickelson had accumulated over $100 million in gambling losses throughout his career. Mickelson disputed the specific number, but not the habit. Combined with his controversial departure to the Saudi-backed LEV Golf Tour and his own admission that the Saudis had a horrible record on human rights, but he was willing to look past it. The gambling revelations completed the demolition of an image Mickelson had spent 30 years constructing. The guy who once seemed incapable of saying the wrong thing had said all of them. During a Golf Channel broadcast, anchor Kelly Tillman was chatting with Nick Faldo about how young players could possibly stop Tiger Woods' dominance. Faldo joked they would have to gang up on him. Tillman laughed and said they should lynch him in a back alley. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Tillman was suspended for 2 weeks. She later said the comment was never intended to be racial. Tiger's camp responded by saying the remark was wrong, hurtful, and clearly inappropriate. Tillman's career never fully recovered. One word said without thinking on live television. That is all it takes. Fuzzy Zoeller was a former Masters champion, an enormously popular figure in the game, and a man who prided himself on his sense of humor. In 1997, he stood under the oak tree by the Augusta clubhouse, drink in hand, as 21-year-old Tiger Woods was marching toward the most dominant victory in Masters history. 12 shots, 27 records, the kind of win that changed golf permanently. A CNN reporter stopped Zoeller for comment. What followed was a racially offensive joke about what Woods should serve at the Champions Dinner the following year. It was on camera, it aired. Zoeller apologized. 2 major sponsors dropped him immediately. He later wrote that the fallout was the worst thing he had ever been through in his life, and that he cried many times. Woods accepted the apology weeks later, quietly, and said he wanted to get back to playing golf. Zoeller's USGA Sportsmanship Award from 1985 sat on a shelf somewhere, while a much shorter clip from 1997 followed him for the rest of his career. "I've come to terms," he wrote, "with the fact that this incident will never, ever go away." He was right. Sergio Garcia is the 2017 Masters champion. He knows what Augusta National means. He has stood on its 18th green in a green jacket and felt everything that comes with that, which makes what happened on the second hole of the final round of the 2026 Masters so thoroughly bewildering. Garcia's drive headed toward the fairway bunker. Before it even landed, he uncoiled a full backhand into the turf, tearing chunks out of Augusta's sacred tee box. He wasn't done. He walked to a cooler beside the tee and swung his driver at it with genuine force, snapping the club head clean off the shaft. He finished the hole without a driver and bogeyed the next 2 anyway. On the 4th tee, Augusta's chairman of the competition committee walked over and issued Garcia the first code of conduct warning in Masters history. Garcia later said he wasn't super proud of it, but that sometimes it happens. He apologized on social media 2 days later. In his 9 appearances since winning in 2017, he has one top 25 finish. When asked to explain, he said, "Bad golf." When asked for specifics, he said, "Bad shots." Whatever Augusta whispered to him on that 4th tee, he declined to share. "I'm not going to tell you," he said, which, considering everything that had already been televised that morning, felt like a little too late to start keeping secrets.